we were speaking about the concept of the why when Mashiach comes will death cease forever. So we were explaining this is because of Ruach HaTuma Avim and Haaretz, because the spirit of impurity, Klippa, will be removed from the earth. And we came to the idea that the level of Aveda, the level of Klippus in general, is a level of spiritual death. And from that devolves lower down the level of physical death. And therefore, when spiritual death is completely eradicated, and that eradication comes about because the great divine and godly revelation that will take place when Mashiach comes. So when that level of eradication takes place, so therefore there won't be spiritual death. Therefore, there won't be physical death because there won't be klippa, which is the cause of spiritual death. And we contrasted this between the divine revelation that was in the time of Shlomo HaMelech, even though the nations of the world were bottled to him, and we said about the queen of Shva that came to him, but still in all, there was still a level of Yenikas HaChitzayim, the klippa still nursed from him, from Kedusha, as opposed to when Mashiach comes, will be a complete bittul of the Ra. Now, in Ois Gimel, line 19 on page Zayin, the Rebbe is going to go on to explain the difference between the revelation of Elokus and the negation of bad that took place in the times of Shlomo versus the negation of bad in the times of Mashiach by comparing it to the level of, by comparing it to the avoida that a person has in their own life with negation of bad. And he's going to give examples of, let's say, the contrasting the avoid of the Beinoni and the Tzaddik, or the difference between the Tzaddik She'eina Gomer and the Tzaddik Gomer. Let's see it inside. To explain the difference between the revelation that was in the time of Shlomo HaMelech. That was that Shemitzad, because of this revelation, there was still room for the Klippus to nurse. At least from the level of the back of Kedusha, Gilui, the La'asid, versus the revelation of the La'asid love of the future time of Mashiach's times. Because of that revelation of Mashiach's times, there won't be any possibility for them to nurse any life, birth, and vitality whatsoever. So the Maimed that Rebbe Marash continues and explains, it is similar to the difference in the avodah of turning away from bad versus, which we say, sur merava seitoi, versus the avodah of despising bad, that he's disgusted by the bad. And this is in Tanya, in the beginning of Tanya. The sur merah, the idea of turning away from bad, he pushes the bad away. In other words, he doesn't engage in the bad. He doesn't connect with the bad in his action. But he doesn't essentially hate bad and evil in an essential way. Like says by David HaMelech, it says, Tachlis sinas neisim, I hated it, a total hate. That is not the level of Sur Merah. The level of Sur Merah does not mean he hates the bad total. Therefore, since his hatred for the bad is not total and complete, though in actuality, though when it comes to machshava dibra ma'aseh, and maybe even deeper than that, he pushes away the bad, nishar etzloi adayin nesinas makim lara. There still remains by the person some room for the bad. Till in the concealed way, he has some type of remnant, some type of smidgen of a love for the bad. Kimavur Betanya, like it's explained in Tanya chapter 10, when it talks about Bedargas Tzadik Sheina Gomer, that it speaks over there that the Tzadik Sheina Gomer, though he hates the bad, though he despises the bad, but he doesn't hate or despise the bad in totality. It doesn't hate or despise the bad completely. Therefore, it must mean that there is still some love in a minor and concealed and tiny way left over somewhere deep concealed inside of it. An example to be able to understand this is that there are things that we despise because they stand in our way of doing greater or better things. But not that the thing itself is something that is disgusting and despicable. So, for example, someone that's rushing to do a business deal that's going to earn him thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, he won't delay if a quarter of his drops into the sewer to try to fish it out. Why? Because it's too. It's what significance does it have? Doing such an activity he despises it because it's going to delay him from making the millions of dollars. But how about to dig into the sewer just to collect garbage? Over there, the actual act of digging into the sewer is something disgusting. In other words, it's not that the quarter has no value to the person, and that's why the person that loses the quarter is not going to delay for it if it's might be losing the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Quarter has significance, but it loses its significance in comparison to the hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the garbage of the sewer, it's not that it has any significance at all. It's completely something that's he's disgusted by. That's what it means that the tzaddik sheina gomer, the incomplete tzaddik, he doesn't have a complete and total disgust for Ra and for Gashmias, let's say, because he sees that Ruchnius as spirituality and the Eibishter is so much greater than Gashmias. So why am I wasting my time on Gashmias, which is a pittance, when it's compared to Ruchnius? But that doesn't mean that Gashmias has no value to him, that Gashmias has no importance. Somewhere deep inside, there is still a value system and some type of appreciation of Gashmias, except in his mind, the Ruchnius is so much greater. There's an expression among Chassidim that said that if the Bali Taiva would know what type of Taiva it is to daven ba'avodah, to daven at length and experience that type of connection with Hashem and that love for Hashem, they would give up all their taivas in the world just for the taiva of davening ba'avodah. What does that mean? That means that really he is a person that's immersed in taivas, except that he can exchange a smaller taiva for a bigger taiva. In that case, the taivas for worldly things is still there, except that he has made a calculation that the taivas for godliness is a greater taiva. In a similar vein, but on a much higher level, is the tzaddik she'ena gomer, that the way though he does despise bad, Alter Rebbe said, but he doesn't despise it in totality. Since he doesn't, the fact that he doesn't despise it in totality, that's an indication that he still has some type of love for it, which is similar to the idea that we said that the klippos are still yoinik over there, ma'acharai. Mashenki, top of page ches. When he despises bad, he despises the bad completely and totally. So in such a case, that's the level of a dargis tzaddik gomer, as he says in Perek Yud in Tanyim chapter 10. Ein etzli shum nesinas makom lara. So then there's no room for bad whatsoever. Shari adraba, just the opposite. He hates the bad, and he despises it. And this hate and this disgust is betachlis hasin of amius. It's a total hate and a total disgust. Derech agav, the Rebbe explains over there in Tanya that the difference between these two expressions of hate and disgust, it depends on what it's focused on. These are two different emotions. Hate and disgust are not identical. So I believe it's from the Rebbe over there, explains in Tanya, that hate is for the ruchnistic klippe, the highest of klippe. That is something that is shaykh to hate. When we talk about disgust applies to the physical manifestation of it. The physical taivas is by him something that's disgusting. I once heard about a certain person who's now a shliach in California, that when he's a child, and he was the first time he was like exposed as a young person, I don't know how old he was, to, it was, I don't know why, but he saw an immodest person by the beach. He threw up. Physically, it disgusted him. So disgust applies when we're talking about a physical manifestation of the taiva. Hate applies to the spiritual source, the klippa, and so on. Anyway, so using that as an example, as a metaphor for a person's own using the person's own relationship with klippa as a metaphor, we can understand in a broader sense how klippas were negated or treated or approached in Shlomo HaMelech's times versus how klippas will be negated when Mashiach comes. Line 5, end of the line. And similar to this, the loss of love. Similar to this is the difference in the revelation that was in the time of Shlomo HaMelech to the revelation of the future times. The revelation that was in the times of Shlomo HaMelech. Though in comparison to this revelation of Shlomo HaMelech's godly revelation that took place then, that we said was kindness, the moon, meaning Malchus, what has its fullest, that godly revelation was revealed. So therefore, Mizbatlim Kolamanagdim, all the opponents become nullified. Similar to the fact that we said that the avoid of turning away from bad, he pushes away the bad. Call Mokim still and all. Yes, there's still room for the external ones to nurse. At least from the back of Kiddush. As opposed to the revelation of the future times with dugmas hamois hamius, it's similar to someone that despises bad in a total type of despising. Over there, that there is no room whatsoever for something the opposite of Kedusha, and that is the type of revelation, and that is the type of experience that will be when Mashiach comes. Now the Rebbe is going to take this a step further, based on another thing over there that the Alter Rebbe says over there in Perek Yud and Tanya. The Alter Rebbe says in Perek Yud that there is two differences between the Tzaddik Gomer and the Tzaddik She'einu Gomer. And this is actually encapsulated in the two names that we have for them. We have Tzaddik Gomer is one name, another name is Tzaddik B'Tovlei. Tzaddik She'einu Gomer is the opposite of the contrast to that, and Tzaddik V'Ra'lo is the contrast to Tzaddik B'Tovlei. What's the need for two names? Each one of these descriptions describe a different experience of the Tzaddik Gomer versus the Tzaddik She'einu Gomer. Tzaddik V'Ra'lo versus Tzaddik B'Tovlei means how much he is negating the bad. The Tzaddik V'Ra'lo means he still has a little bit bad in him. Still has, like we said, a little bit love over there. The clip is not completely despised by him. Tzaddik B'Tovlei, no remnant of bad is left over there. He completely and totally despises and hates the bad ba'etz. Why is that so? The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, because the love of the Tzaddik Gomer is of a different caliber than the love of the Tzaddik She'einu Gomer. The Tzaddik She'einu Gomer has a level of love of Ava Kirish Be'esh, a flaming fire. The Tzaddik Gomer has that level of Ava B'Tanugim, a love of delight. And the Alter Rebbe goes on to say, because of their loves, that is why that is the reason of how they despise the bad. Because the Tzaddik She'eina Gomer, called Eina Gomer because his love is not the complete type of love. It's not the total love. Therefore, the result of that is that the disgust of the bad is not total, and the hate for bad is not total. And the Tzaddik Gomer, because his love is a total love, he has a love of the light and Ava B'Tanugim. That's why he's called a Tzaddik Gomer, indicating the level of love. That's why what results from that is that clip is totally negated, totally despised, totally hated. He's a tzaddik v'toiv. So in the tzaddik, it's in the micro, in the person himself, we see that the revelation of light within the person, in other words, the loves that he has, is what impacts the type of hate that he has for the bad, the type of disgust he has for the bad. So again, it's the light and revelation that determines how much klippa will be negated. Based on this, we can understand even more that I was going to say in the next paragraph, the difference between Shlomo HaMelech's times and Mashiach's times. Oh, Shlomo HaMelech's times, as great as the revelation was, but it's metaphorically and by example similar to the love of the Tzaddik She'eina Gomer, and therefore there's not a complete negation of bad. Whereas the revelation of Mashiach's times is similar to the powerful love and the great love of the Tzaddik Gomer, and therefore the result of that, just like in the micro by the Tzaddik Gomer, the result of his great love is a complete disgust and hatred for bad. The same thing, when Mashiach comes, the revelation of godliness will be so powerful that it will completely negate and eradicate the bad completely. I said the entire point of the next paragraph outside. I just want to show you where we're going with this. Let's learn it inside. Line 16, page ches. Yes, Lois, we're going to add, according to what's explained in time. The great hatred for Sitra Achra and the disgust in that he despises the bad. Here we see that hatred he associates with the word Sitra Achra. And the disgust, he identifies it with bad itself, is seemingly to the bad of this world, the manifestation of it. It's comparable and is an exact relationship with how great his love for Hashem is. What comes out is that the difference between just turning away from bad to despising bad is not just in regards to how much he negates the bad, but also in the greatness and the manner of his love to Hashem. Therefore, it's the comparison and using this as an example for Mashiach's times fits in even better. According to this, it becomes even more gishmak, this comparison of the distinction between turning away from bad, despising bad, the loss of love to the difference that was between the revelation that was in the times of Shlomo HaMelech to the revelation of the future times. The difference between them in the way how the bad is negated. During the revelation of Shlomo HaMelech's times, there was still room for the klippas to nurse. As opposed to the revelation of Mashiach's times, that there's no place at all for the klippas to nurse. It's because of the difference by them in the level and the manner of the light and the revelation. So again, it's all dependent on how much the revelation of light is, and that determines the negation of klippas. Any questions before we go on?
Is there a coupling, like if the more
Okay,
you love?
line 29 is Daled, page
I have a
Ches.
question.
Okay,
Is there a coupling, like the more you love, that you automatically hate more, or vice versa, or are they independent?
are you talking about in general, or are you talking about when it comes to Klippa?
In Klippa.
So in Klippa, that's explicit in Tanya. He says it openly in Perek Yud and Tanya, that the greater love of the tzaddik, and according to the greatness of the love of the tzaddik, that's the degree to which he despises Klippa. But the truth is, we see this even in our world, in normal loving relationship. If you have a friend that friend is being annoyed by someone, bothered by someone, persecuted by someone, you will be upset at that person that's persecuting, annoying your friend. But you will be much more upset at that other person, or you'll have much more hatred for that other person, or be much more disgusted by the other person, if the one who is being annoyed is not just a friend, but someone very close and dear to you, a parent, a spouse, a child. Over there, the love is much more powerful, and over there, you will, do whatever it takes to intervene and stop and even attack and undermine that person because of your great love for the one that they are in opposition to. So we see this type of relationship and this type of correlation, that the greater the love, the more powerful the hate or the disgust is.
But like, I could love to be healthy, for instance, and I can also love chocolate ice cream.
First of all, that's the problem with the English language.
Okay.
Loving ice cream is not called love. But
Well, you know what I mean.
I don't want to go off the topic of that. If you want, we can have a discussion about it. Okay, let's go on. Is Daled on line 29, page Ches. So now the Rebbe is going to try to apply this, as he always does, to our avodah. When the Rebbe talks about what will take place when Mashiach comes, the Rebbe never, or never is a strong word, the Rebbe always and often applies it back to us. If this is what's going to happen when Mashiach comes, there needs to be, in our avodah now, preparatory to that, and bringing that about, an avodah that reflects that. It's not just, I do A and Mashiach rewards me, and the Eibishter rewards me, Mashiach does B, but when my avodah reflects the type of revelation and the type of experiences of Mashiach's times, so that is what causes and brings about Mashiach's times. So the Rebbe is going to do that as well with what we describe now about how Mashiach's times will be a complete eradication of bad, and seeing where this applies in our avodah now prior to the coming of Mashiach. In here, do what's known, all the revelations of the future time, including the Masein or the same Akshav, are dependent on our actions and our service now, like Al Rebbe says in Perek Lamed Zayin and Tanya. Them moving from this understood the fact that in the future it will be this revelation. That doesn't allow any place for the external ones to nurse, as we said, lנצח, death, which is going on Klippa, spiritual death, and therefore the physical death will be completely cut off, will be completely gone when Mashiach comes. It's like explained in the Maimer, and that Maimer of the Rebbe Rashab explained that through Yid hating the bad, b'tachlis hasina, with a total and complete hate, top of page 10, through this, it comes about above that I hated Esav betachlis hasina, in a total hate. In other words, we know the pasuk says, "Balei och Esav Yaakov." Yaakov and Esav are brothers, and yet v'oyev es Yaakov. I love Yaakov, but Esav sonesi, and I hate Esav. Which means, Chassidus explains that being that the pasuk is not saying that Esav is worse than Yaakov, and therefore I hate him, which means that the hate of Hashem for Esav is based on some reason, but rather the hate of Esav is in that very same place where Yaakov and Esav seem to be the same. They're brothers. So that means that the hate that Hashem has for Esav is a total hate. Just like we speak about that when Hashem chooses something, because it's free will choice, it's not because of something has a benefit over the other. So a choice is a much deeper connection. The same thing, this hatred, that's a result like of Hashem's choice. Because he chose Yaakov, therefore he hates Esav, or his love of Yaakov is by choice, his hatred of Esav is by choice. So the hatred that Hashem has for Esav is a total hatred. And because of this hatred towards Esav, towards Klippa, there'll be the spirit of Tumah removed from the land, which is identical, according to what the Maimer explained, that Lenzach, that death will be cut off and stopped forever. So the Rebbe is going to say, where does this statement of the Rebbe Marash apply to the average Yid? The Rebbe Marash is saying that through Yidden in general, doesn't say a individual Yid, an individual Yid, he says Yidden hating the bad, that causes above that the Eibishter hates the bad, and when the Eibishter is hating the bad is manifest, so then it becomes the times of Mashiach. So the Rebbe is going to ask, who did we speak about before hates the bad? That's a tzaddik gomer. How does this apply to what the Maimer says over there? When Yidden will hate the bad total. So let's see the way the Rebbe enumerates all the different levels that we're dealing with over here in Yidden. That's not just a tzaddik gomer. Line 4 on page 10. The Rebbe brings down the beginning of Tanya, the Medrash, the Blashon of Chazal, that Hashem saw that tzaddikim are very few, and therefore he scattered them amongst all the generations. In every generation he scattered a few tzaddikim. And the tzaddik of Tanya is talking about one who hates bad. And then the Rebbe goes on to say, even that Medrash is talking about including both the tzaddik gomer and the tzaddik she'eina gomer. Ubefrat shesinas hara b'tachlis tzaddik gomer, idargas tzaddik gomer, especially hating bad totally, is a level of a complete tzaddik. So if it's a level of a complete tzaddik, that's even fewer people are considered a tzaddik gomer than what we say that they are few, that the Eibishter scattered them. And then going even further, let's not even get into the tzaddik gomer. Let's not even get into tzaddikim. Even concerning the level of the bein yadua pisgam, it's known the phrase and the expression halavai beinani halavai. We wish that we would be beinani, which means that really many are not even a level of a beinani. On the other hand, va'inyan the bilam mavlas lenzach yebechol Yisrael. That idea that death will be stopped forever, will be in all Yidden, and moving, as that's understood from this. That this avoided to hate the bad and the total hatred, is possible to be also by Beinanim, even those that are lower than the level of Beinani, because all of the Yidden are the ones that are bringing about the coming of Mashiach, when it's going to be this revelation through their avoid of hate and clip. So the Rebbe is going to explain how and when that applies, as we will continue tomorrow, Mitzvah.